Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever worked hard for years only to discover that someone with less experience earns more than you? Imagine going to work every day, staying late, taking on extra responsibilities, helping your team succeed, and then one casual conversation changes everything. You find out a coworker who just joined the company makes 30% more than you. Shock, frustration, doubt. Do you stay silent? Do you feel resentful? Or do you prepare, stay professional, and fight for what you're worth? In today's real-life work story, The Salary Gap, you will follow one professional's journey from discovery to negotiation, learning how to handle unfair pay, manage emotions, and confidently advocate for fair compensation. This story will help you improve your English listening skills, learn useful workplace vocabulary and negotiation phrases, understand real-life strategies for handling career challenges. Listen carefully, notice the phrases, and think about what you would do in the same situation. Let's begin.
It was a normal Thursday morning. You arrived at the office, coffee in hand, ready to tackle your tasks for the day. The first few hours went by as usual, emails, meetings, and reports. But then came lunch. You sat down in the break room with a few coworkers, chatting casually about weekend plans and the new project deadlines. Then a comment caught your attention. Your coworker, someone who had only joined the company a few months ago, casually mentioned their salary. At first, you didn't think much of it. Salaries were not usually a topic of conversation, but curiosity got the better of you. You asked, almost jokingly, how much they were making. The answer hit you like a lightning bolt. The number was significantly higher than what you earned, 30% higher to be exact. Your hands froze around your coffee cup. You blinked a few times, thinking you must have misheard. Maybe they made a mistake. But deep down, you knew it was true. You remembered all the extra hours you had put in, the late nights finishing reports, the times you helped solve problems no one else could. And now, someone with less experience, who was still learning the ropes, was earning more than you. You felt a swirl of emotions, shock, confusion, frustration, and even a little betrayal. You tried to focus on your coworker's words, but your mind was racing. How could this happen? Had your efforts gone unnoticed? Was all your hard work invisible to management? For the rest of the day, it was hard to concentrate. Every email, every task, every interaction reminded you of that number. You kept replaying the conversation in your head, analyzing every detail. You wanted answers, but at the same time, you didn't want to confront anyone without being prepared. By the end of the day, you realized something important. This wasn't just about money. It was about recognition, respect, and fairness. You had dedicated years to your career, but now you had to face the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes hard work alone isn't enough. And that was the moment it hit you, the beginning of a journey to understand the salary gap, evaluate your worth, and find the courage to speak up.
After the shocking discovery, you couldn't stop thinking about the numbers. That evening, at home, you reviewed your own salary, comparing it with the industry standards you could find online. You pulled out old emails praising your performance, reminders of projects you led, and records of extra responsibilities you had taken on. You wanted to be fair to yourself. Maybe there was a reason for the difference. Perhaps your coworker had unique skills, or maybe they were in a slightly different role. You started listing the tasks you did every day, preparing reports, managing clients, mentoring new team members, solving problems that nobody else could solve. Then you listed your coworkers' tasks as far as you knew. The comparison was startling. There was no clear justification for their higher pay. The thought gnawed at you. How can this happen? You asked yourself. I've been here for years. I know the company, the clients, and the processes. Why is someone with less experience getting paid more? The more you thought about it, the angrier and more frustrated you became. You also started noticing small things at work. Every email that mentioned the new hire's accomplishments, every compliment they received, Every casual comment about bonuses and perks, it all reminded you of the gap. You felt a mixture of envy, disbelief, and a sense of being undervalued. At the same time, you knew you had to remain professional. You couldn't let jealousy or anger affect your work. You reminded yourself, this wasn't a competition, it was a problem that needed a solution. You needed facts, not feelings. So you began a careful process of documenting everything: your achievements, your extra hours, the praise from supervisors, the successful projects you completed. You even started researching market salaries for your position, noting the pay range for someone with your experience in your city. Knowledge became your shield against frustration and your first step toward action. By the end of the week, you realized something important. Comparing yourself to your coworker was uncomfortable, but it was necessary. This was not just about money, it was about fairness and recognition. You couldn't ignore it, and you couldn't let it slide. You were beginning to understand that addressing the salary gap would require strategy, patience, and courage. And the first step was accepting reality. The gap existed, and it was time to face it head-on. After days of thinking and comparing, the reality of the salary gap began to weigh heavily on you. At first, it was just a thought you could push aside, but soon it became a constant presence in your mind. You started feeling anxious before every meeting, every email, and even when simply walking into the office. The more you tried to focus on work, the harder it became. Every time your manager praised the new hire or mentioned their contributions, a sharp pang of frustration hit you. You knew deep down you were just as capable, maybe even more experienced, but the gap made you feel invisible. It was as if years of dedication didn't count for anything. Even outside of work, the feelings followed you. You found yourself replaying conversations, comparing your achievements to your coworkers, and questioning your worth. You felt overlooked, demoralized, and unappreciated. Sleep became restless. Your mind couldn't stop analyzing. Friends noticed you were quieter, distracted, and more irritable than usual. At the same time, you knew letting emotions take over wouldn't help. You couldn't confront your manager while angry or upset. You realized that if you wanted to fix the problem, you needed to balance your emotions with professionalism. So, you tried small coping strategies. You took walks during lunch, wrote down your thoughts in a notebook, and even practiced deep breathing. Each time the frustration returned, you reminded yourself, this wasn't about venting, it was about preparing to advocate for yourself. The emotional toll, however, was undeniable. You were learning the hard way that workplace unfairness doesn't just affect your wallet, it affects your confidence, focus, and mental health. You realized that the challenge ahead wasn't only negotiating a raise, it was regaining your sense of worth and staying calm under pressure. By the end of the week, you made a promise to yourself. You wouldn't let the salary gap define your feelings or your career. Instead, you would use this experience as motivation to plan carefully, gather evidence, and speak up professionally. The journey was just beginning, and you knew the emotional battle would be as important as the practical steps. After facing the emotional roller coaster of the past week, you knew that frustration alone wouldn't solve anything. If you wanted to address the salary gap, you needed proof, not just feelings. You had to show your manager that your contributions, experience, and value were worth every penny of the raise you deserved. You started by reviewing your past projects. You dug through old emails, reports, and presentations, looking for clear examples of successes. Each project reminded you of the hard work you had put in, late nights finishing reports, extra client calls, and problem solving that nobody else could handle. You documented every achievement, making a list of dates, outcomes, and measurable results. Next, you looked at your extra responsibilities. You had trained new team members, helped solve urgent client issues, and even taken on tasks outside your job description. These were not small contributions. They were critical to the company's success. Writing them down made you realize just how much you had done, and it also strengthened your confidence. Then came the research. You didn't want to rely on assumptions, so you looked at industry salary benchmarks. You found data for your role, experience level, and location. Numbers from reputable sources confirmed what you already suspected. Your current salary was below the standard. This evidence was objective. It wasn't based on feelings or jealousy, but on market reality. Finally, you organized everything into a clear, professional document. Achievements, extra responsibilities, and market data were all listed logically with bullet points, dates, and references. You practiced explaining each point in a calm and factual way. This was no longer a conversation about emotions. It was a discussion about your value and fairness. By the end of this preparation, a sense of empowerment replaced some of the frustration. You realized that knowledge and preparation could be your strongest allies. The emotional toll of unfair pay didn't disappear, but you now had a plan. You were ready to face your manager with facts, confidence, and professionalism. Even with your evidence organized, you knew that facing your manager alone could be intimidating. This was more than just a conversation about numbers. It was a delicate negotiation, and you wanted to approach it with strategy and confidence. You realized it was time to seek advice from people you trusted. First, you reached out to a mentor, someone who had been in your industry for years and understood workplace dynamics. You explained the situation carefully without letting frustration take over. Your mentor listened attentively, asking questions to understand the full picture. Then came the guidance you needed. Advice on how to structure your conversation, which points to emphasize, and how to present your case professionally. Next, you spoke with a close friend who had experience in negotiations. They offered a fresh perspective, helping you see the situation more objectively. Focus on your contributions and market standards, they said. Don't make it personal, and don't compare yourself to your coworker too much. Show your value and be ready to discuss next steps professionally. Through these conversations, you realized something important. You didn't have to face this alone. Seeking advice didn't make you weak, it made you stronger. It gave you new ideas, confidence, and reassurance that your feelings were valid. You also learned about the language and tone you should use, making sure your words were firm, respectful, and persuasive. Armed with guidance and a clear plan, you spent the weekend practicing. You rehearsed your points in front of a mirror, imagining possible questions from your manager and how you would respond calmly. You wrote notes to keep your thoughts organized and reminded yourself to stay professional no matter what happened. By the end of the week, you felt a renewed sense of purpose. The emotional weight of the salary gap was still there, but it was now balanced with preparation, advice, and a clear strategy. You understood that standing up for your worth wasn't just about asking for money, it was about self-respect, fairness, and career growth. After gathering evidence and seeking advice, you knew the next step was crucial: preparing the conversation with your manager. This wasn't just about asking for a raise, it was about presenting your case clearly, professionally, and confidently. You realized that preparation would make the difference between being dismissed and being heard. You began by organizing all your notes. Achievements were listed first, followed by extra responsibilities you had taken on, and finally, the market salary data you had researched. You highlighted measurable results, such as projects completed ahead of schedule, clients satisfied, and team members mentored. Every point had a fact, date, and outcome, so there was no room for ambiguity. Next, you worked on your language. You practiced using calm, assertive phrases. Based on my contributions and industry standards, I would like to discuss my compensation relative to my experience and responsibilities. I am committed to the company and want to ensure my salary reflects my value. You also rehearsed responses to possible pushback. If your manager said, "We can't adjust salaries right now," you could respond with, "I understand, but can we discuss a timeline or a plan for future adjustment?" Practicing these responses helped you feel confident, not defensive. Another key part of preparation was controlling emotions. You knew the conversation could be stressful, so you practiced breathing techniques and visualized staying calm even if the discussion got tense. You reminded yourself that this was about fairness and your value, not about blaming anyone or comparing yourself to your coworker too aggressively. Finally, you set the tone for the meeting. You planned to start by expressing gratitude for your role and the opportunities you had received. Then, you would present your evidence logically, followed by a respectful request for a salary review. Ending the conversation on a positive, collaborative note would leave room for negotiation without confrontation. By the end of your preparation, you felt ready and empowered. The anxiety of the past weeks hadn't disappeared, but it was replaced with focus and strategy. You realized that preparation wasn't just about making a case for money, it was about professionalism, confidence, and self-respect. The day of the meeting finally arrived. Your heart was racing as you walked into your manager's office. Your hands felt slightly clammy, and your mind replayed every point you had prepared. But you reminded yourself, you were ready, organized, and professional. You started the conversation by expressing gratitude. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me," you said. "I really enjoy working here and appreciate the opportunities I've had to contribute to the team." This simple acknowledgement set a positive tone and showed your manager that your intent was professional, not confrontational. Then came the key part, presenting your evidence. You spoke calmly, outlining your achievements, responsibilities, and the extra work you had taken on. You referenced measurable results, showing exactly how your contributions benefited the company. You also mentioned your research on market salaries, explaining that your current compensation didn't align with your experience and contributions. At first, your manager listened quietly, occasionally nodding. There were moments when you felt nervous, wondering if you had gone too far. But then, when they asked clarifying questions, you answered with confidence and calm. You avoided comparisons to your coworker's salary and focused entirely on your own value and performance. When you finally made your request, a review of your compensation, you framed it respectfully. "I would like to discuss adjusting my salary to reflect my experience and contributions. I'm committed to the company and want to ensure my compensation is fair and competitive." You left space for dialogue, showing flexibility and professionalism. The conversation lasted longer than you expected. Your manager asked questions, considered your points, and acknowledged your contributions. While the outcome wasn't immediate, the discussion itself was a victory in communication. You had presented your case clearly, remained calm under pressure, and advocated for yourself without anger or blame. By the time the meeting ended, you felt a sense of relief. You had faced one of the most stressful conversations of your career, and you had done it with confidence and professionalism. The salary gap wasn't resolved yet, but you had taken the first critical step toward recognition and fairness. After the meeting, you walked back to your desk with a mix of relief and nervous anticipation. The hard part, the confrontation, was over, but now came the most challenging phase, waiting for a response. The next few days felt longer than ever. Every email notification made your heart skip a beat. Every meeting you attended, every casual remark from your manager seemed like it could contain a clue about the outcome. You tried to focus on your work, but your mind kept returning to the conversation. Did they understand my points? Are they considering my request? Will they offer a raise or dismiss my concerns? You realized that the waiting game was testing your patience and emotional control. Doubts crept in. What if they say no? What if this affects my relationship with the team or my manager? What if my effort was wasted? It was easy to spiral into anxiety, but you reminded yourself of one important lesson. You had done everything right. You had prepared, remained professional, and presented your value clearly. Now, all you could do was wait. During this period, you practiced coping strategies. You focused on completing tasks efficiently, staying engaged in meetings, and avoiding overthinking every little sign. You even used small mindfulness exercises, breathing deeply during lunch breaks, taking short walks, and jotting down thoughts in a notebook to calm your nerves. At the same time, you kept reflecting on the process. You realized that waiting was part of every negotiation and professional interaction. You couldn't control the timing of the decision, but you could control your attitude, preparation, and response. Each day, this perspective gave you more patience and less stress. By the end of the week, the tension was still there, but you felt stronger. You had faced fear, managed uncertainty, and maintained professionalism. The waiting game was hard, but it was also teaching you resilience, an essential skill for career growth and self-confidence. Finally, a week after the meeting, your manager called you into their office. Your heart raced as you walked in, but this time it was a different kind of nervousness, not fear, but anticipation. This was the moment you had been waiting for. Your manager began by acknowledging your contributions. "We've reviewed your projects, your responsibilities, and the research you presented," they said. "You've clearly gone above and beyond, and we appreciate your hard work." Hearing these words made a wave of relief wash over you. For the first time in weeks, you felt recognized and valued. Then came the part you had hoped for, the salary adjustment. Your manager explained that the company acknowledged the gap and wanted to make it right. They offered a raise that reflected your experience, contributions, and market standards. Additionally, they outlined a plan for future growth and promotions, showing that your career trajectory was being taken seriously. The relief was overwhelming. Months of frustration, anxiety, and preparation had finally led to a positive outcome. You realized that advocating for yourself, calmly, professionally, and with evidence, had worked. This wasn't just about money. It was about fairness, recognition, and standing up for your worth. As you left the office, you reflected on the journey. The process had been stressful and uncomfortable, but it had taught you important lessons. You had learned the power of preparation, the value of mentorship and advice, and the importance of remaining professional, even in emotionally charged situations. By facing the salary gap head-on, you had not only received the compensation you deserved, but also strengthened your confidence and self-respect. You understood now that sometimes taking initiative and advocating for yourself is essential in shaping your career and achieving fairness. With the salary adjustment finalized, you finally felt a sense of closure. The months of confusion, frustration, and anxiety had come to an end. But more importantly, you realized that this experience had taught you valuable lessons, lessons that would shape your career for years to come. First, you learned the importance of knowing your worth. Hard work alone isn't always enough. Understanding your contributions, experience, and the market standards allowed you to advocate effectively and confidently. You realized that self-awareness is a critical tool in any career. Second, you discovered the power of preparation and evidence. By documenting your achievements, responsibilities, and research, you presented a strong, factual case. Emotions alone cannot make change. Facts, clarity, and professionalism are what open doors. Third, you saw the value of seeking advice and mentorship. Talking to mentors and trusted colleagues helped you refine your approach, remain calm, and view the situation objectively. Guidance from experienced voices can make a huge difference in navigating difficult conversations. Finally, you learned about professional courage and resilience. Advocating for yourself wasn't easy. It was uncomfortable, stressful, and even a little scary. But standing up respectfully for fairness strengthened your confidence, self-respect, and ability to handle future challenges. As you returned to your daily work, you felt empowered. The salary gap had been uncomfortable, but it became a turning point. You realized that taking initiative, Preparing carefully and communicating effectively are not just tools for negotiation, they are tools for growth, recognition, and long-term success. You smiled, knowing that this experience would stay with you forever, not because of the raise alone, but because of the lessons learned and the confidence gained. From now on, you would face challenges with preparation, speak up when needed, and always know your value. Thank you for watching this real-life work story about the salary gap. We followed the journey of discovering unfair pay, dealing with frustration, preparing evidence, and finally speaking up professionally to achieve recognition and fairness. Remember, experiences like this are not just about money, they are about knowing your worth, advocating for yourself, and growing in your career. By preparing carefully, seeking advice, and staying professional, you can handle difficult situations with confidence and respect. We hope this story helped you improve your English listening skills, workplace vocabulary, and understanding of real-life professional challenges. You can use the phrases, tips, and strategies in your own career and daily conversations. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life work stories designed to help you learn English naturally. And remember, every challenge is an opportunity to learn, grow, and show your value. Keep practicing, stay confident, and see you in the next story.